morning, everyone. What a glorious July morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Christina Fox, the CEO of Tech Alliance, and as the Regional Innovation Center for Southwestern Ontario, Tech Alliance is the place for dreamers, innovators, and world-changing ideas. Tech Alliance is for you. We're focused on building a globally competitive innovation economy that enables entrepreneurship, spurs accelerated growth, attracts ambitious talent, and new companies. So before we get started, a few key points for this morning. Everyone is muted on the call, and today's Fireside Chat will be recorded and available for replay afterwards. Feel free to add any questions that you have to the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be sure to make time for them because this is a chat after all. If you'd like to keep up with everything there is to know about Southwestern Ontario's innovation economy, sign up for our weekly newsletter. Look for our invitation to subscribe in the chat bar. So please join me in welcoming members of our board of directors, Konrad Konnerth and Keith Murray. Konrad has been in the automation and robotics industry for 35 years, starting his career as an industrial mechanic before being promoted as a mechanical design engineer with OKU Automatic in Germany. Subsequently, he worked as an in-house consultant at Siemens in Germany and in Portugal, specializing in process optimization for manufacturing and assembly processes, and implemented the first Kanban system in a Siemens facility in Portugal. In 2003, Konrad founded KONNEXIO with an audacious goal to develop pre-engineered and configurable factory automation solution that provides short lead times and unparalleled flexibility for automation degrees and engineering changes. KONNEXIO has since developed numerous innovative machine platforms for the automotive and agriculture industry. Amazing, right? Next is Keith Murray, a standout operations leader, improving and overhauling many aspects of auto data solutions as he rose from support specialist to chief operating officer. Keith joined Autodata in '99, and during his tenure at Autodata, Keith was involved in many facets of the organization, from dealer support and training to development, product development, and provided executive level leadership across the organization. As the COO, Keith was responsible for the overall delivery of technology, solutions, and content, including oversight of content creation, pre-sales, project delivery, and ongoing client account management and functional areas of the organization, including development, quality assurance, architecture, project management, solutions analysts, driving profitability while ensuring employee satisfaction and continuous improvement. Straight up, Keith is a rock star. I've had the privilege of getting to know both Konrad and Keith over the course of the last 10 months, and I'm really excited to be chatting with them today. We do have a common belief between our board, our staff, and our entrepreneurs and residents, and the entire technology community that in pursuit of creating spaces where innovation thrives, we need to have conversations like these with all of you. In this Fireside Chat summer series featuring members of our board of directors, we continue to gain tips and insights in a casual setting. With decades of experience in manufacturing technology, these two panelists will take a deep dive into all things related to operations, efficiency, technology and innovation, talent retention, resiliency, global trends, and of course, the current challenges facing all businesses around the world. Today, we are fortunate to have two talented, knowledgeable industry leaders around the bonfire as we talk about keeping on track the importance of operations. Welcome, Keith. Welcome, Konrad.
Thanks, Christina.
Thanks, Christina.
You bet. Okay, so let's get started. This first question is going to be for both of you. Konrad, I'll start with you. How should business leaders prepare their operations for a post-pandemic business world?
Well, I think that the last few months now have actually shown that many changes have been implemented that normally would take years or even decades sometimes to do, and we've done those pretty much within weeks or days sometimes. And I think some of these changes are actually going to be here to stay. So we need to be now firming up those changes and actually make them more permanent. Some of them will be things like working from different locations, working from home. Business travels, for example, is going to be a big issue. I think that many people will not travel as much for business as they have done in the past. And I think our communication has changed quite differently. The way we're getting together, like even this year, for example, we didn't make those kind of online virtual meetings in the past. I think sales will be more virtual. In my industry, as you can see in the background here, machinery, it is not easy to do virtual sales, but I think even we are doing more and more contacts with customers, show them virtual concepts and ideas that again, we've never even tried this a few months ago. And I think what we need to do is now we need to kind of sit down and actually implement those changes in terms of the policies that have to be changing for our employees, the due diligence part of it, the cybersecurity, to firm all those things up to make it really safe. And I think that the restart will be probably slow for some industries or for most industries. And companies actually probably should go out and do scenario planning. They should think about what is their strategy, how do they think they're going to be reopening up again, because it will differ in different industries. And the last thing that I would like to mention is I think that companies also should be thinking about a possible second wave. I know that's not a popular opinion probably, but we just have to be aware of that, and there are going to be probably some partial closures, and just maybe have that part of your strategy going forward to not be surprised by that.
Wow, thank you. That's a great kickoff. Lots of good detail in there. And I love the fact that you called out your background, because I know I find it so fascinating to see that in the background. So over to you, Keith. How would you like to contribute? How should business leaders prepare their operations for a post-pandemic business world? What's on your mind?
I think there's the obvious things around cleaning and sanitization and things of that nature. I think the new normal going forward is going to have to focus on that. That is going to have to be part of our new normal on a go forward. I think echoing some of Konrad's points around remote work, working from anywhere, I think we've shown over the last number of months that, through necessity, we had to adapt very quickly. And I think that, the folks that I'm familiar with and the organizations I'm familiar with have done a phenomenal job of making that leap to a remote workforce. So I think maintaining that flexibility for folks going forward is going to be essential. Konrad again touched on a second wave, and being mindful of that and being aware of things that we can do to prevent that from happening or minimize the impact of it. Maintaining that flexibility of being able to work anywhere, I think is going to be essential to that.
And often people say that with the flexibility comes, increased joy. Some people have a strong desire to be socially connected in the workplace, and have the opportunity to be in the workplace with lots of precautions, but also the potential of working from an environment, a remote work environment that makes people happy. So I love the fact that you brought that forward when we think about, human beings and their need for social connection.
Yeah, I think the people part of it is, if you kind of put that at your foremind and think, what do we have to do to make sure that we've got a happy workforce? And I know that I'll put that in air quotes. I think that will help to set the mindset.
Terrific. Okay, I'm going to start with the next question, Keith, with you. So what role do you see automation and AI playing for SMEs in the near future?
I think there's two elements when I think of automation and AI. From my perspective, I've got a technology software development background, and thinking of automation there, I think of efficiency, and I think of how do you produce a better quality product. Automation plays a very significant role in that, and I think having an increased focus on automation from that perspective is going to be paramount. From an AI perspective, I think of how do consumers or individuals interact with software, and AI, I think, has there's an opportunity to improve that client and customer satisfaction. I think of chat integration, for example, and being able to have a more meaningful automated interaction leveraging AI. I think there's a huge opportunity there.
That's awesome. Thank you. Konrad, how about you? The role that you see in automation and AI playing for SMEs in the near future?
Well, as a general statement, I think it will increase tremendously for sure. I think in many different areas. I mean, like he just mentioned, in the business and in those areas, in tech a lot. But I think also a lot in the actual manufacturing, for example. We already have started a kind of process in 10 years ago to actually make robotic more flexible, more modular. And I think we're going to be even going further now. It's actually needed more of this because our supply chains have somewhat changed. And especially with COVID-19, people now want to do more locally again. that goes into the same key that we have for many years have seen, that the product variance has changed. We are having products now that have much more variability, shorter life cycles, shorter development cycles, and all these things are required to do with automation, for example, to help with those. One other aspect we're seeing now in the last 2 or 3 years, and again, this will be implemented or will be now scaled up even more, is actually in the robotics for agricultural applications. There's new technologies coming on board like 5G that will tremendously make a difference there, but even existing ones. And so what agriculture is going through right now, they need a big improvement in yields. And of course, they have to reduce the labor costs and the labor shortages that is now, for example, happening even with migrant workers. The issues that we had with COVID-19, for example. So we're seeing a lot of farmers actually now are open and much more prepared to invest into robotics and automation part of their operations because they see they just need to be done.
Okay, thank you. So Konrad, the next question I'm gonna start with you. You've had a really incredible international career. We mentioned at the top of the call, time in Germany and time in Portugal. So it makes sense that we start with you on this question about offshore. So how does offshore play into your current strategy in the current environment?
We have, and we probably will continue. We will continue to have some of our products manufactured abroad in order to assemble them here and build them here. That's from a cost point of view. But I think in overall, they will be probably scaled back somewhat. And I think, again, with automation, we're trying to bring manufacturing back into the area to be cost effective in it. So from my point of view, I think there will be somewhat of a scale back in offshore development, but it will not be eliminated, for sure not. We will need that, absolutely. And COVID-19 has shown this, that we want to, at least the mission critical parts, we want to make sure we can still get those made here. And maybe the ones that can be mass produced, have those and have them on stock, for example, so we can live off those. So I think offshore is still important, but maybe not as important and not as globally, universal as it was before.
Okay, that's great. Keith, how about you? How does offshore play in current strategies in the current environment? What's your opinion on that?
I think that offshore will continue to be important. I think some of the points that Konrad made around repatriating some of that manufacturing work, I think that will happen. And what we'll see, I think, on the technology side, as the company grows and you look for global opportunities, there are opportunities to place workforce locally in a global market. I think there's a couple of advantages there. One, you've got local support, local folks that are supporting your business. As you become global, obviously your cost structure, your focus should not exclude the cost structure. And I think having that lower cost averaging across distributed workforce can be an advantage. I think the other piece that is important when you think of supporting from a technology perspective, having the ability to do a follow the sun type model where you've got to support North America as well as Pacific Asia or what have you. There's a real opportunity to be able to have that localized follow the sun model that can work really well.
Wow. That's terrific. I like the fact that you talked about the comparison with offshore international as well as local, and it leads us into the very next question related to talent. So as we are shifting to a more remote workforce, or as we see a maintained remote workforce to offer flexibility and options in the future, how would you ensure that you attract and retain great talent? Because it means that there's different kinds of opportunities. And I know that this is an area of focus for you. Why don't you kick us off with that, Keith?
I think you have to focus on an awareness across the market. What's happening in the market? You've got to look now, your competitors aren't just down the street. They can be literally across the country. And you've got to look at what are other organizations doing. You have to be competitive from a pay, benefit, work environment perspective. I think work that is meaningful and being able to align an individual's work to the contribution at the, the top line revenue line, I think folks connect and engage better with when they have an understanding of what they're doing and how those keystrokes line with the end product. I think that maintaining that flexibility that we've talked about is important as well. You said it best. Some folks look forward to that social interaction of being in an office, and having that as an option and offering that to your workforce is important. But you can't ignore the fact that that flexibility is also important to a lot of folks, and having the ability to work remotely or flexible work hours or things of that nature. I think that's how you continue to attract and retain talent. Once you have folks in the door, you want to make sure that again, that meaningful work, you want to make sure that there's a career path, there's a professional development path. You want to be engaging with them. And particularly if you are in this environment where it's remote, you want to take extra care to make sure you're connecting with your teams. That becomes critical. If someone doesn't feel engaged and connected to the organization, they're not going to be tied to the organization and have no loyalty to the organization.
I really like that you shared that. It's, as much the retention and creating a meaningful workspace where there's career path and professional development, but also, attracting talent to come to the organization, to come to the company as you continue to grow and scale or pivot your business. So Konrad, a different question for you then on maintaining morale and effectiveness in your workforce. How do you do so? How do you maintain morale and effectiveness while still dealing with the added stress of, remote work or social distancing and possibly reduced business activity?
Well, everything that Keith just said, basically. I can just second that what Keith said, but the flexibility part I think is very important. I mean, especially right now at the moment, we all have circumstances that nobody could foresee, and people have struggling with childcare and so many different things, and we have to find a way to be flexible around those. And we have accommodated our employees and still continue to do that. We always actually had flex work here. We have a kind of a core hour to what you just said, Keith, in terms of you want to still meet at the office at some point in time. But for the most part, some people come early, some people come late, some people stay longer. And we try to implement that kind of flex time, because for us, it's all about getting the work done, not about the hours. So we're trying to not to count on the minutes. We're trying to really see how we can encourage our people or help them to get their work done in the best possible way. And the communication is the biggest part of this, right? How do you communicate to your people, especially when some of them work remotely? We have increased a lot of our online task, management. Basically, we're doing this much more now. We're almost micromanaging these online tools, so that everybody kind of knows not just what am I supposed to do now, but what is kind of waiting for me next in line, basically, so they can either think about it or prepare for it, or at least you kind of see where things are going for us. Also, we've been trying to involve our people in the strategic decisions. I mean, this was actually a very good time to think a little bit about, what are we doing here? Are we doing the right thing? How do we get through this time here? How do we get out of this situation? And those kind of discussions we had with our employees, we were sitting down, he was kind of trying to figure out exactly and get their input to make those things. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to engaging them and being part of the decision of the current situation.
I feel like there's a couple of questions that have come through on the Q&A, and I feel like you've sort of nailed one of the remote post-pandemic. Do you think that there will be a shift in how businesses look at finding efficiencies in operations and how teams operate? So you made a couple of really good points there, Konrad, about the communication, tying people's work to the higher vision, having the concept of it's not necessarily about the hours put in, but the outputs. I have found in conversations with many leaders across our community and our region that productivity is really high for people who have been in a remote work scenario. Do you have any additional insights or specific tactical ideas that you might share? And I'm going to ask the same from you, Keith, on finding efficiencies in operations so that teams can operate with that efficiency and maintain that high productivity. Is there anything more that you would add to that, Konrad?
Well, one thing we've been starting many years ago, and we now continue doing this kind of online, where we're having at least twice a week, we kind of get together and have like a huddle, and we're discussing all of the projects. We're going through them and saying, typically we do is project team-based. I mean, not everybody's involved in the whole company, but for each project, we're going from team to team. And we're discussing the whole where we are, what we need to do next, and what's kind of the critical milestones on our agenda, right? And as those things, we couldn't always do them here in our shop anymore. So now we've transitioned those into more online tools. And we found that actually was even more productive. It was actually even to the better. So in a way, maybe we'll stay, maybe we'll continue that way.
That's awesome. Keith, how about you? Is there anything that you'd like to add related to sort of some tactical approaches for operational efficiencies and maintaining some of that high productivity that companies have been enjoying?
I think Konrad nailed it with regard to, stand-ups. When you think of an agile methodology, one of the key tenets is that daily stand-up where you talk about what did we do, what are we doing today, what are the obstacles in the way, and the whole team is connected to the task and what we're trying to accomplish. One thing that I've found is that people tend to be a little more punctual on remote meetings. You get a little pop-up to say, hey, the Teams meeting is starting or Zoom starting or what have you. And I think we tend to be a little more efficient with our time now. So I think I'd like to hope that continues.
And I keep asking, sorry, I keep asking my employees always kind of 3 questions on those meetings. Tell us what you're working on right now at the moment, so that everybody kind of has the idea what are you basically right now involved in, and then tell us what do you need from somebody else. So because very often we kind of depend on each other's work, and if the other person doesn't know that he's waiting on your work, kind of a thing, then it's very difficult, right? And then the third thing is always I'm trying to find out what are the challenges right now that you're struggling with, right? Where can we help? Whereas maybe somebody else can give you some inputs. And I'm always trying to get our people to answer those 3 questions as they tell us about what's going on in their life.
Right. Yeah, I love that. It's the concept of, maintaining an agile approach in a bit of a scrum fashion, but also embedding that human interaction that's necessary to ensure that cohesiveness of team, that there's, continued accountability and sort of embedded core values of I've got your back. And even though that this is a different working environment, the ability to move things forward by asking key questions and having those daily stand-ups, we have found that to be really effective in our organization. And yes, we are seeing certainly promptness to meetings because there's not someone grabbing a coffee or whatever. So there's some of the absence of social, but I find, again, in talking with others and both yourselves in the community, that there's a really good time and place for social interaction with the team. But things like those daily stand-ups where there's an agile approach of, high productivity, it's really interesting how and when we choose our social connection, and really good fluidity and balance in that regard. So great feedback from both of you for that question that came in on the Q&A. I might just actually look at there's another question that's come in, and then we'll shift our conversation. So for manufacturers with global supply chains and international markets, there is a lot of discussion around sourcing Ontario-made or Canadian-made supply chains, whether that be technology innovation or materials. What would you recommend manufacturing entrepreneurs start to source, or would you recommend manufacturing entrepreneurs start to source alternate local suppliers to hedge risk? Who wants to take this one first?
I'll kick it off because I know Konrad's more of the manufacturing expert, so I'll make a really light response here.
Awesome.
I think hedging risk is certainly important, regardless of what the topic is. I know from personal experience, just as a consumer, a lot of supply has been disrupted through this COVID-19 situation. In order to be able to continue to provide services or products to your customers, having that uninterrupted supply chain, especially in this just-in-time environment that we're in now, I think it is critical to have alternative sources for material. I think you've got to look at the risk reward in terms of what opportunity costs are you going to give up in order to maintain a second supplier or an inventory or things of that nature, versus what's the impact going to be to what disruption are you going to experience if your supply chain is cut off or impacted?
Okay, Konrad, over to you.
Yeah, I think wherever possible, we should. It's not always easy, I think, because we don't make everything here in Canada, obviously, and we would like to bring more manufacturing over here. Whatever is lost, we would like to bring more here, and I think automation and robotics can help with that. But of course, the nature is that we still have to source some of it from abroad. I mean, we import a lot of material from Europe or from the US. Probably most of our stuff comes from the US in terms of motors and components and robotics and so on. But if we can, whenever we can, we will source locally, because for me, it's more important to get it quick and get it here locally than to maybe get a few dollars cheaper, for example. So the speed and the reliability is much more important to us than even the cost side of it sometimes.
Okay. We're going to shift gears a bit here and talk a little bit more about Keith and Konrad and the community. So Keith, you know, we certainly have for both of you, we have the privilege of working with you as a member of our board of directors, but I know, Keith, you're engaged in different scenarios through the community and have been located in London for many years. Can you tell us about your involvement with Will Employment Connections and the importance of maintaining a community mindset, particularly in difficult times?
Sure. I started as a mentor with Employ probably 6 years ago. And that basically is working with new Canadians, helping them understand the local job market. Sometimes it's as simple as helping them refine their resume or pointing them in the direction of job leads, helping them build a network. You know, sometimes it's helping them with the interviewing process, you know, doing mock interviews and things of that nature. Recently, last month, I was selected to the board of directors for Will Connection. I'm really happy to be part of that organization. I think they do a lot of really good things in our community. With regard to what do I get out of it, you know, maintaining those connections with the community and working with, you know, folks that are trying to build their career or starting their career, you know, I find that extremely gratifying to be able to help support those initiatives. You know, particularly now, it's a tough time for folks to stay connected. You know, I usually meet with the mentees face to face. Obviously, that hasn't been possible, so we've been you know, doing Teams meetings and you know, still trying to maintain that personal connection. It's been interesting and you know, certainly a different dynamic, but I find it's been effective. So it's been good to maintain that through COVID.
And it's so different when you think of the type of mentoring that can happen in the community, and sort of in the absence of some of the experiences that are in London or region, where you might suggest that your mentee joins you and you act as an opportunity to be a connector in different experiences. It certainly is different. So that one-to-one, more intimate connection that happens between mentors and mentees, you know, certainly still can be alive and well through Zoom and Teams, but there's something about being in the community with others and making those introductions and those meaningful connections. I hear you. I have a strong desire to get back out and see people and shake hands. But in the meantime, you know, making creating opportunities to still have that high touch engagement with people who are in the midst and joining organizations and being able to see results and success as a result of your engagement with particular individuals. And so, Konrad, it's the most perfect segue to you, I would say. Keith teeing you up really well, particularly with Keith talking a little bit about Employ and his early experience as being a mentor. We've certainly had the pleasure of sharing your story about your mentor connection to Employ in London, Konrad. So can you tell us about the value of mentoring as you see it and newcomer talent to the innovation economy?
Well, I mean, the best thing is when our mentees find good jobs and valuable jobs for themselves, and we feel really good about that. That's the foremost. So it's definitely a satisfaction helping others and helping them, finding the way around, like he said before, and trying to help them, because it's all new. And I remember when I came here, I had the same problem finding no, I didn't look for a job, to be quite honest, but I had to look for customers. And that's not always easy, you know. Yeah. But to understand the landscape and to understand, you know, how to apply for jobs and the whole interview situation, that's always very helpful if you can help those people with. Personally, I also have learned from those experiences a lot. I mean, just because, you know, we didn't have to look for a job at a time, that still doesn't mean we're learning through them how other companies and other HR operations do those kind of things. So even I've learned a lot of things. And we then also have met potential, you know, employees or partners. I mean, some of them are very valuable to us, and we actually hired the one or the other and said they'll be a good addition to our team, for example. So there's a lot of benefit there. And of course, you know, last but not least, extending our network to just get more people, because no matter who there is, they will find jobs and they will be on the industry, and they probably be part of our network in the future.
Mm-hmm. I commend both of you. I think London has had the incredible benefit of attracting newcomer talent to our community when we think of professional skill sets and the opportunity for a really diverse community. When you're connected to organizations like Employ and Will Connections, you know, it's better for all of us. And so I really have enjoyed hearing the stories that both of you have been engaged in our community, and so many other leaders who make the priority of supporting and connecting people who are new to our community. So, you know, on behalf of London, thank you for your involvement there. And as you both said, there's certainly the value to each of you in that engagement, but the tenfold experience of connecting with others, I'm sure is what brings, you know, all that additional joy. So next steps. Time check is 11:36. We're coming to a part of the conversation that's a wee bit more fun, or a little bit more lighthearted, or a little bit more personal perhaps, in that we're going to do our rapid fire. That means that it'll be, you know, a couple words or a sentence or less for each of these next fun questions. I'm going to go back and forth between Keith and Konrad, Konrad to Keith. I'll call out your name as I call out the question. So are you guys ready for rapid fire? You think you can do this?
Ready.
Excellent.
That's good.
Okay, so Keith, because you gave the thumbs up, you're getting the first question. So top lesson learned or takeaway during COVID?
People are resilient.
Oh no, that was my answer. Being resilient.
Anything more to add, Konrad?
Communication, like I said, talking, making sure you stay in touch with people. No matter how, you need to stay in touch.
I love it. Awesome. Okay, so then Konrad, hardest thing to adapt to?
Not being able to travel.
Oh yeah, you do like travel, don't you?
Yeah. So for me, being home for 3 months now, never been before.
No.
So.
What about you, Keith? What's the hardest thing to adapt to?
Missing social interactions and those ad hoc face-to-face communications.
Yeah, totally agree. So Keith, best tool to stay connected?
Sorry, say again?
The best tool to stay connected?
Video conferencing, Teams, Zoom, whatever.
Awesome. Konrad?
WhatsApp. I have even customers in Germany that use WhatsApp. It's the most common tool pretty much all over the world.
Right. Okay. So Konrad, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I'm not sure exactly if I wanted to be anything else but an engineer, but actually I always wanted to be a cosmopolitan, like traveling and being out in the world. So that's probably the closest that I have a vision of myself.
Awesome. Keith, how about you?
I wanted to be a doctor.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, it's never too late.
I could apply.
Okay, so Keith, ocean or mountains?
Both.
Yeah, totally fair.
Top out.
Konrad, how about you?
Mountains.
Yeah, okay. Konrad, wine or beer?
Wine and scotch.
Okay. Keith, how about you?
Beer and scotch.
There's a commonality. So resiliency and scotch, they maybe go hand in hand.
There you go.
So Keith, prefer a book or a podcast?
Book.
Yeah. And how about you, Konrad?
Book.
Yeah.
Podcast only when I exercise.
Okay. Excellent. Anything that comes to mind about a book off the top of your head that you might recommend? Either one of you.
Ooh.
I'm just reading one about feedback, being open towards feedback. I can't remember the exact title, but it's really, really good.
Awesome.
Good to Great is one that comes to mind. A lot of great lessons in it.
Yeah.
I know it's a classic. It's one that comes up regularly, and I have to agree. It's one that's good to go back to from time to time.
Yeah.
And then final words of advice. Keith, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Surround yourself with good people and let them go.
Yeah. All right. Konrad, how about you?
I would say enjoy the process of building and of creating and of being part of the future, and don't worry too much about the outcome.
Yeah. That's good advice. The idea of like surround yourself with good people, get out of the way to let them grow and do what they need to do, and then continuing to have sort of that evolving opportunity.
Focus on the process, not on the outcome, basically, right? It's more important.
Right on. Well, so I want to thank both of you for your time today, Konrad and Keith. It's been a hoot to have time with you. Some of even the sameness of your answers. I think we had a really good pairing for both of you today. So to excel through uncertainty and constant change now more than ever, with the title of this experience today, Staying on Track, we certainly thank you for your insights, ideas, and your stories, and particularly on the personal side. We always say Fireside Chats are always more fun with friends, so join us the same time next week on July 22nd for Rising to the Occasion with Strong Leadership with our chair, David Ciccarelli, who's the founder and CEO of Voices.com, and our vice chair, David Stroop, the CEO of Media Sonar. You can register and fire off your most pressing questions for two incredible leaders in innovation and what it takes to build and run a thriving technology business. So that's it, everyone. That's it for today. I'm wishing everyone a great rest of the week. Have an incredible day. Be well and take good care. Bye, everybody.